and you will hear more about that later. Thank you.
¿Qué tal, amigos? Hoy jueves 20 de noviembre de este año 2025. Lo que acaba de pasar en la Casa Blanca es de no creer. El equipo del trumpismo, el gabinete de Donald Trump, literalmente están en modo pánico. Y hoy nos demostraron en una conferencia de prensa lo que es un auténtico desastre. Ojo, no lo digo yo, lo vimos todo. Caroline Leavitt, la secretaria, la vocera, salió a inventarse cosas sobre los demócratas. Salió a intentar justificar lo injustificable. Y bueno, como pudieron observar, frente a la prensa, los cuales la enfrentaron por ciertos comentarios, terminó huyendo del escenario. Pero bueno, eso no es todo, porque antes de salir corriendo, un periodista le preguntó algo muy básico. Y bueno, una forma de querer encararlo. Y es, ¿qué quiso decir Donald Trump cuando llamó piggy, o sea, cerdita, a una reportera de Bloomberg? Si es que no lo vieron el video, en un momento se los coloco. Y bueno, Caroline Leavitt, en vez de condenarlo, prácticamente justificó el insulto, diciendo que así debe de tratarlos, que Trump es transparente, que dice lo que piensa, o sea que la reportera merecía que le dijeran piggy. Así de asqueroso, señores. Ese es el ejemplo, ¿no?, que quieren que sigamos. Esa es la moral que quieren dejarle a la siguiente generación. Pero bueno, primero veamos el momento en el cual, por si no lo vieron, les recuerdo la memoria, el momento en el que Trump insulta a esta periodista. Y bueno, aquí tienen a Caroline Leavitt intentando justificarlo.
Tomorrow, and I'll let the president speak for himself. Natalie.
Thank you, Caroline. What did the president mean when he called a reporter piggy?
Look, the president is very frank and honest with everyone in this room. You've all seen it yourself. You've all experienced it yourselves. And I think it's one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president, because of his frankness. And he calls out fake news when he sees it. He gets frustrated with reporters when you lie about him, when you spread fake news about him and his administration. But he also is the most transparent president in history. And he gives all of you in this room, as you all know, unprecedented access. You are in the Oval Office almost every day asking the president questions. And so I think the president being frank and open and honest to your faces, rather than hiding behind your backs, is frankly a lot more respectful than what you saw in the last administration, where you had a president who lied to your face and then didn't speak to you for weeks and hid upstairs and didn't take your questions. So I think everyone in this room should appreciate the frankness and the openness that you get from President Trump on a near daily basis.
Luego, sin que nadie se lo pidiera, se lanzó contra el presidente de Sudáfrica, Ramaphosa. Dijo algo como que deje de hablar, que cierre la boca. Y todo esto mientras en Sudáfrica se está realizando una cumbre del G20, a la cual Estados Unidos ni siquiera va a asistir, porque Trump insiste en esa absurda teoría, ¿no?, conspirativa de que hay un genocidio blanco en Sudáfrica y que allí solo los blancos deberían de recibir un estatus de refugiados. Pero bueno, escuchen.
For you, the New York Times is reporting that the administration is now sending a U.S. official to the G20. They are sending Mark Dillard. Can you confirm if that is true, and then also explain the shift in? I'd be happy to explain, because there is not a shift. The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. The ambassador, or the representative of the embassy in South Africa, is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming. On Ukraine, there have been...
Como si no fuese lo suficiente, suelta otra joya. Que lo bueno del cierre de gobierno es que aprendimos que ya no necesitamos de un departamento de educación. Así de estúpido. Escuchen.
The Democrats' reckless 43-day government shutdown did manage to do one valuable thing. It proved that America does not need a federal Department of Education. During the longest shutdown in history, the Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff, and America's education system was not impacted whatsoever. Schools stayed fully open across the country. Students attended class and received normal in-person instruction, and our wonderful teachers received their paychecks uninterrupted. The Democrats' government shutdown made it painfully obvious that American families do not need the Department of Education.
Increíble, amigos. Estamos hablando de un cierre que dejó familias sin asistencia, sin acceso a salud, sin beneficios alimenticios del SNAP. Y al parecer, Caroline Leavitt concluye que lo importante es eliminar el Departamento de Educación. Una vez más perjudicando a los niños. Todo lo que hace este régimen, desde ocultar los archivos de Epstein, atacar el sistema de salud, al Medicaid, al Obamacare, ir en contra de la educación pública, ¿no? Tiene un patrón clarísimo: castigar a los más vulnerables. Y esperen, porque todavía hay mucho más. Caroline Leavitt anuncia la reunión del día de mañana entre Trump y el alcalde electo de Nueva York, que es Zohran Mamdani, y lo llama el pequeño comunista. ¿Qué clase de gente adulta habla así, no? Literal, señores, parecen personajes sacados de una telenovela. Pero bueno, escuchen.
I think you'll all hear from him directly. I also think I will just add, it speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House, because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people, whether they live in blue states or red states or blue cities, in a city that's becoming much more left than I think this president ever anticipated in his many years of living in New York.
Luego un periodista la enfrenta, afirmando lo siguiente: ¿cómo acusan a los demócratas de violencia política cuando Donald Trump lleva prácticamente todo el día publicando en redes sociales que deberían de ser ejecutados los demócratas? Él mismo dice que George Washington los colgaría. Todo porque algunos legisladores recordaron que los militares no deben seguir órdenes ilegales. Y bueno, Caroline ni responde, es más, miente, evade. Y bueno, luego corre otra vez. Miren esto.
Can I just follow up? The president and the vice president, for that matter, have accused the other side of encouraging political violence. Isn't that exactly what the president is doing when he says that members of Congress should be killed?
Why aren't you talking about what these members of Congress are doing to encourage and incite violence? They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders.
Actually,
Every
they said
single
you can refuse an illegal order, which is
they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not. Every single order that is given to this United States military by this commander-in-chief and through this chain of command, through the Secretary of War, is lawful. And the courts have proven that. This administration has an unparalleled record at the Supreme Court because we are following the laws. We don't defy court orders. We do things by the books. And to suggest and encourage that active duty service members defy the chain of command is a very dangerous thing for sitting members of Congress to do. And they should be held accountable. And that's what the president wants to see.
Otro reportero le pregunta sobre el famoso plan de Trump para Ucrania, que básicamente es rendirse ante Rusia, entregarles todo el este del país y por último desmantelar la defensa ucraniana. Y bueno, ella solo sabe repetir algo, y es: ¿leíste el plan? ¿Lo leíste? Lo publicaremos. Pero a ver, señores, ya sabemos lo que dice. Es exactamente lo que quiere Putin. Pero bueno, escuchen.
Sure. Go ahead.
Follow up on Ukraine. You said this is a good plan. So according to our sources, this proposal demands major concessions from Ukraine and doesn't demand much from Russia. So was Russia involved in drafting
Your
this?
understanding is wrong. Have you read the full plan? You haven't.
Sources said.
Yes.
So if you can give details, maybe.
You've read reporting from one side of the war. And so I want you to understand that the administration has talked equally with both sides. You have seen President Trump engage directly with both President Putin and President Zelensky. Likewise, his national security team has as well. In fact, Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio met with some of the Ukrainians just in the past week to discuss this very plan. And so just like you saw with respect to Israel and Gaza, we are hearing out both sides of this war to understand what can you commit to end the war? And that's ultimately how we are going to get to an agreeable solution. That's what the president has directed of his team. I know there's a lot of criticism out there and a lot of doubters, but I would just remind you of the historic success that this president and his team accomplished in the Middle East. We believe that is possible with Russia and Ukraine, and we're hoping and working very hard to achieve that.
Finalmente llega la pregunta que lo resume todo. Está diciendo que sin importar qué orden de Trump, incluso si es un crimen de guerra, el ejército tiene que obedecer. Y amigos, ella responde que sí. Que si él lo manda, entonces está bien. Esto es real. Escuchen.
Brian.
Thank you, Carolyn. Two questions. We were talking about before, earlier in this briefing, about the president's orders. You were going back and forth about what the ad said and what it didn't say. My first question is...
The ad?
The advertisement that the Senate Democrats were featured in. So my first question is, no matter what the order is, it could be to any administration official, military or otherwise, no matter if legal experts might think it's illegal, does the president expect those cabinet members, administrative officials to go ahead with those orders regardless of any outside thinking or expert?
The president expects his cabinet officials and the administration to follow the law and to demand accountability and hold people accountable for their dangerous rhetoric. And I would just add that if this were Republican members of Congress who were encouraging members of the military and members of our United States government to defy orders from the president and from the chain of command, this entire room would be up in arms. But instead, it is the other way around, and I think that's quite telling. I'm going to let you all go because the president, excuse me, the president, I appreciate the encouragement this morning, but this afternoon, but President Trump is about to meet in minutes with Israeli hostages who this administration freed, and so I'm going to go up to that meeting, and you will hear more about that later. Thank you.
All right, Caroline.
Ahí lo tienen, amigos. Un día más dentro del caos absoluto del trumpismo, inundado en la Casa Blanca. Ahora bien, señores, algo muy interesante, me atrevo a decir, algo brutal salió el día de hoy. Y es que mientras Donald Trump sigue gritando persecución política, resulta que ahora son sus propios funcionarios los que están bajo investigación federal por manipular procesos, por alterar investigaciones, por tratar de fabricar casos en contra de sus enemigos políticos. Así es, amigos. No es Adam Schiff, no es Letitia James. Son los funcionarios del trumpismo los que podrían haber cometido una mala conducta muy grave. Para que estemos en la misma página, estamos hablando de Bill Pree y de Ed Martin. Son no muy conocidos seguramente para ustedes, pero bueno, son figuras claves dentro de esta administración. Se trata de los que impulsaron estas investigaciones por un supuesto fraude hipotecario en contra del senador Adam Schiff y de la fiscal general de Nueva York, Letitia James. No es el mismo caso de James Comey, por cierto. El problema es que, según fiscales de carrera, esas investigaciones no tienen base, no tienen evidencia. Es más, parecen un encargo político. Y ahora el Departamento de Justicia está examinando si es que esos funcionarios manipularon procesos, utilizaron a personas no autorizadas para empujar los casos. Pero bueno, veamos de qué se trata.
A federal grand jury is investigating moves made by Bill Pulte, President Trump's head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. They're looking into whether the mortgage fraud investigations into Senator Adam Schiff and possibly New York Attorney General Letitia James were tainted. Joining us with her exclusive reporting, MS Now senior investigative reporter Carol Leonnig. Carol, really good to have you. Why are they looking into Bill Pulte?
Thanks for having me, Katie, and for focusing on this. What we learned this morning was that a federal grand jury in Greenbelt is looking at Bill Pulte, who is a huge, staunch Trump ally and the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, because it's alleged that he improperly and possibly illegally deputized unauthorized people to help in his mortgage fraud investigations. You'll remember, and MS Now viewers will remember, that these investigations have come under incredible criticism, especially internally from career prosecutors who say that the charges that Bill Pulte is pushing for of Trump critics like New York Attorney General Letitia James and also former Senator Adam Schiff, not former, current Senator Adam Schiff, don't have facts to back them up, don't have facts to justify bringing a criminal case. Prosecutors over and over have concluded this. Now the shoe is on the other foot, and it's kind of extraordinary and dramatic. The Justice Department that was investigating the people Bill Pulte argued should be investigated is now investigating him and his methods.
And what about Ed Martin? How does he figure into this?
The same way, there are allegations that Martin, who also joined Pulte in pushing these mortgage fraud prosecutions, again, based on facts that prosecutors did not feel were sufficient in any way, that Martin also was essentially creating sort of deputy dogs to help him in this work, but that they were not authorized to be part of the investigation. This is a developing story, Katie, and I want to say something a little bit, I guess, that sounds like a tease, but stay tuned because there's new information, and we are, meeting the standards for publishing new information, but there is new information about this that we believe we'll be able to report shortly.
Okay, we're gonna stay tuned for that. I'm curious though, because this is a new development that I think I was not expecting today. This is the DOJ investigating 2 Trump officials, and how did that come about? Because so far what we've seen is DOJ has done the investigating that Donald Trump wants in terms of politics. How did the DOJ open an investigation and then get one approved into 2 of Donald Trump's own officials?
So great question. Our sources say that the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, is well aware of this probe, not technically running this investigation, but aware of it and familiar with it and not in any way interfering with it, but possibly even encouraging it. There is a claim by some of our sources that Blanche and some of the people around him at the top layers of the Department of Justice have been very frustrated with the methods used by Ed Martin and Bill Pulte, and their frustration about the possibility that these cases are not solid, the ones that both men have been pushing, despite them being Trump allies and doing what Trump really would like, which is going after his perceived enemies, his critics in this case. It is a problem, according to our sources, for Todd Blanche to have cases that aren't being handled very properly. And as we saw, there were some unforced errors in another case in the Eastern District of Virginia yesterday. We're told Blanche is a little bit embarrassed about all of that.
Oh, yeah, the Lindsey Halligan stuff and the not presenting the indictments to a grand jury before having the foreman sign off, a major administrative error that could get the whole case tossed. I mean, it could mean the indictment itself is not valid. It's a big deal. Carol Leonnig, thank you so much. Always appreciate you coming on. If you have that reporting in the next hour and a half, please do alert us and we'll come.
Ok, señores, lo que acabamos de ver es algo gravísimo y les voy a explicar el porqué. Primero, Bill Pulte no es cualquier burócrata. Hablamos de un aliado leal al trumpismo, alguien que fue colocado estratégicamente para investigar a quienes Trump veía como enemigos políticos. Y claro, estas investigaciones en contra de Adam Schiff, en contra de Letitia James, estaban basadas en una acusación sin tener un sustento real, a tal punto de que fiscales de carrera se estuvieron negando una y otra vez a presentar cargos. Es más, algunos hasta renunciaron. Pero bueno, esto es lo que lo vuelve tan importante, porque no estamos hablando de un error administrativo. Estamos hablando de la posibilidad de demostrar que utilizaron el aparato del Estado para perseguir a rivales políticos. Es la oportunidad perfecta. Algo que claramente nos recuerda a las tácticas autoritarias. Y claro que Trump lleva años insinuando que haría esto. Ahora, volviendo la tuerca, el Departamento de Justicia. El que Donald Trump exige que lo defiendan. Ahora está investigando a quienes trataron de cumplir exactamente lo que él pedía, ¿no? ¿Por qué es que es tan cuestionable esto? Según el reportaje, como podemos observar, se habría utilizado a personal no autorizado. O sea, básicamente son los comandos improvisados, es una etiqueta que se utiliza mucho en este concepto, y es para empujar casos que no pueden sostenerse de evidencias. O sea, eso ya no es una investigación, eso es un mecanismo de persecución.
In an extraordinary concession in court yesterday, prosecutors in the federal case against former FBI Director James Comey admitted the final indictment against him was never presented to the full grand jury. Interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, who has no prior prosecutorial experience, initially presented a 3-count indictment, but the jury rejected one of those counts, Justice Department lawyers said yesterday. Then, rather than drafting and presenting a new 2-count indictment, Halligan printed a new version without presenting it and admitted only the foreperson and another grand juror were present for signing it. The judge appeared skeptical of the government's arguments throughout this hearing and went on to question prosecutors on whether the indictment was retaliation by President Trump. The judge also questioned Halligan herself, calling her a possible puppet for the president. Comey's attorney went on to argue the judge should throw out the case entirely, saying Trump used DOJ to, quote, punish a perceived political enemy. Comey faces obstruction and false statement charges stemming from testimony he gave to Congress in 2020 about leaks at the FBI. His trial at this point is set for January, and he's pleaded not guilty, but he's challenging the indictment on multiple grounds, including whether Halligan was lawfully appointed. Want to bring in former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg. Dave, good morning. You know, reports say that you could hear a pin drop after this admission about the grand jury not being present for the full signing of the actual 2-count indictment. So just talk us through how stark this mistake, frankly, is by Halligan and her fellow prosecutors.
Allie, good to be with you. Yeah, well, first off, Lindsay Halligan was given the keys to a clunker, and yet she took it off the used car lot. And every mile, it's like she gets another nail in her tire. I mean, yesterday, the judge offered yet another reason why the Comey case can be dismissed by Thanksgiving. So it turns out that the entire grand jury never saw the final 2-count indictment after the jurors rejected the first of the 3 counts. Now, the rules say that the full grand jury must see the indictment before it's presented to a magistrate. And that may seem like a harmless technicality, but there is precedent in Washington, D.C. to dismiss an indictment in a case like this. And if that happens, it's game over because you can't refile it because the statute of limitations have expired. So here what happened was all but 2 of the jurors went home after they voted. And when Halligan returned with the revised indictment, there were only 2 people left and the foreperson signed it. And so you have this whole comedy of errors. But that's what happens when you send an inexperienced insurance lawyer into a grand jury on a very weak case. Screw-ups like this are gonna happen.
Yeah, I think everyone was sort of forecasting that there were a few different ways that this case might ultimately fall.
Y esto es lo que yo creo que más debería de enojar. Donald Trump y todo el círculo trumpista siguen hablando del estado profundo. Pero este caso nos muestra que el verdadero abuso viene de su propio equipo. Están intentando forzar acusaciones inexistentes en contra de personas como Adam Schiff, como Letitia James, que recordemos, Schiff lo investigó en el Congreso y bueno, pues Letitia James lo ha demandado múltiples veces y ha salido ganadora. La justificación trumpista no se sostiene. Siempre habrá alguien que diga, pero bueno, quizás solamente estaban haciendo su trabajo, quizás realmente creían que habría un fraude. El problema con ese argumento es que fiscales profesionales, gente de décadas de experiencia, han revisado la evidencia, han concluido, no había caso. Entonces, ¿qué hace un funcionario insistiendo, presionando y trayendo gente no autorizada? Eso es una agenda política, señores. El subprocurador que es Todd Blanche, recordemos, un hombre cercano a Trump, prácticamente el ex abogado de Trump, no habría bloqueado la investigación. Incluso estaría avergonzado por los errores, por la chapucería con la que se llevaron a cabo estas supuestas investigaciones. Entonces, cuando incluso dentro del equipo de Trump dice que esto está mal, amigos, eso ya nos dice todo, ¿no? Esto no es un simple escándalo burocrático, es una señal y una muy alarmante. ¿Cómo es que Trump está demostrando a la luz del día que su administración y sus órdenes son para manipular el sistema judicial, para perseguir a sus críticos? Y ahora, esta manipulación podría estar regresando para morderlos. Si el Departamento de Justicia, pues, confirma la mala conducta, ¿no? Bueno, estaríamos ante otro ejemplo de este patrón de corrupción institucional, ¿no?, que Trump ha incluido en el gobierno. Pero bueno, ¿qué opinan ustedes, señores? ¿Creen que estos funcionarios actuaron siguiendo órdenes directas del trumpismo? ¿O creen que esto tal vez fue una iniciativa propia para complacer al trumpismo? Bueno, los leo en los comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.